As the sun poured golden light through the window of their modest café, Samuel cradled his steaming cup of coffee, savoring the rich aroma that wafted through the air. At the other side of the table, his 8-year-old son, Lucas, stirred his hot chocolate, eyes wide with innocent curiosity. The warmth within the café provided a stark contrast to the chill of winter outside, making it a refuge not just from the biting cold, but also from the haunting memories that often clouded Samuel's thoughts. "Look at that man with the dog, Dad," Lucas exclaimed suddenly, pointing out the window. Samuel smiled, following his son's gaze with fondness. Parenting had brought him unexpected joy, a flicker of light in the shadows of his past. It was a fresh start after losing his wife, Clara, 5 years prior, a wound still fresh beneath the surface. As Samuel took another sip, a soft tinkling of a bell chimed as the café door opened. He turned slightly to catch a glimpse of the newcomer when Lucas's voice broke through his reverie. "Daddy, is that Mommy?" The world around Samuel halted. Time warped as he turned slowly, heart pounding against his chest, and there she was. Clara stood just beyond their table, her auburn hair cascading like a waterfall over her shoulders, illuminated in radiant hues by the sunlight. It was as if all those years of pain, the grief that had anchored him, shattered in an instant, replaced by disbelief and wonder. "Clara!" he whispered, hardly believing his own voice. She turned, her expression mingling surprise with recognition. "Samuel!" Her voice was the same, tender and soothing. Instinctively, he stood, as if propelled by an invisible force, leaving his cup clattering on the table. Lucas remained blissfully unaware, fixated on the sight before him, the vision of what he believed to be a magical reunion. But as Samuel took a step closer, he felt fear creep in. What had happened to her? Why had she left without a trace? And more importantly, what would this mean for the new life he had built with Lucas? 1,000 memories flooded his mind, days spent laughing, the warmth of their home, Clara's vibrant spirit that once filled their lives with joy. Clara stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with tears. "I'm sorry," she said, frantic yet steady. "I never wanted to leave you. I thought it was for the best. I thought I could spare you both from the pain." His brow furrowed, confusion mired in hurt. "You left me. You left us." His voice trembled, caught in the chasm of longing and resentment. Lucas, sensing the tension, shifted in his seat, glancing between his father and the woman he barely recognized. "I had my reasons, Samuel," she pleaded, stepping closer. "I was sick, and I didn't want either of you to see me like that. I thought disappearing was the answer, but it was the worst decision of my life." Explaining the intricacies of her struggle with illness and ultimately her recovery seemed futile amidst the torrent of emotions pouring from Samuel. Yet, as the conversation unraveled, the love they once shared resurfaced, the laughter, the dreams, the plans to build a family, all interrupted by a choice driven by fear. Lucas interjected, his small voice breaking through the heavy silence. "Are you my mommy?" He eyed Clara curiously, innocence shining in his youthful gaze, bringing both Samuel and Clara back to reality, grounding them in the space of the here and now. Clara knelt down, meeting Lucas's eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm your mommy," she said, her voice trembling with vulnerability and hope. "And I love you more than anything." Samuel watched, his heart torn. Here was the woman who cradled Lucas within her for 9 months, who held him in her arms, and yet had chosen to vanish into thin air. the memories of their past tangled desperately with the possibility of healing. Would they be able to mend the fractures that had split their lives apart? In the days that followed, Clara and Samuel began to navigate the perplexing dynamics of their reawakened relationship while trying to bridge the gap for Lucas, who split his time between bewilderment and excitement. Each evening, they met at the café, where Samuel attempted to rekindle the romance they once cherished over countless cups of coffee, albeit each encounter threaded with lingering tension and unspoken fears. As weeks turned into months, they faced the reality of their past together, learning, forgiving, and most importantly, beginning anew as a family. They shared stories, laughter, and the mundane details of life, piecing together a tapestry of shared experiences lost in time. Gradually, the walls Samuel had built crumbled, exposing the love that had always simmered beneath the surface, waiting patiently to be rekindled. One winter evening, Samuel found himself alone with Clara after Lucas had drifted off to sleep, curled up on the couch in a blanket cocoon. They sat across from each other, the soft glow of the fireplace casting flickering shadows around the room. Something shifted in the air, a moment pregnant with possibility. "I can't change the past, but I want to create a future together," Clara said softly, her eyes glistening. "If you'll let me back in." Samuel hesitated, aware that trust is forged in time, not promises. Yet, in that moment, he saw the woman he had fallen in love with once upon a time. The dreamer, the partner, the mother of his child. He reached out, taking her hand in his. "I don't want to live in the shadows anymore," he confessed. "Let's step into the light together." As they embraced, the weight of their shared history began to lift, replaced by a sense of renewed hope. The echoes of yesterday faded, transformed into whispers of tomorrow, a promise of love reborn, a family reunited, and a future waiting to be discovered. In the heart of winter, amidst the frost and chill, they found warmth in each other's arms, a second chance woven delicately into the fabric of their lives, bathed in the light of forgiveness and love. And perhaps, just perhaps, happiness was waiting for them on the other side of their journey, a testament to resilience, love, and the undeniable bond that tied them together. As the golden light filtered through the café windows and warmed the small wooden tables that had seen years of whispered conversations and quiet mornings, Samuel held his cup of coffee between his hands, letting the heat seep into his palms as if it could thaw the cold that had settled in his chest over the past years, while his 8-year-old son Lucas stirred his hot chocolate with a concentration so intense it made Samuel smile. Because Lucas always approached the simplest things with the wonder Samuel wished he still had, the wonder he lost the day Clara disappeared without a goodbye, leaving behind a hole that never stopped echoing, a silence that never truly went silent. And now here he was, sitting in the café that had become a refuge for both of them, a place where the warmth of the air tried to combat the winter outside and the winter inside him, a place where he tried to rebuild a life that had been broken in ways he still struggled to understand, remembering how the first time he walked into this café alone, without Clara at his side, he felt like the entire world had tilted, like every chair, every cup, every laugh from nearby tables stabbed him with memories he wished he could erase but also feared forgetting, because forgetting Clara felt like losing her all over again. And Lucas's voice suddenly cut through his thoughts when the boy pointed eagerly out the window and said, "Look at that man with the dog, Dad." And Samuel followed his tiny finger and saw an older man walking a beagle wearing a ridiculous holiday sweater, and he chuckled softly, ruffling Lucas's hair as a fleeting warmth bloomed in his chest, a warmth he hadn't felt in so long that he always hesitated to trust it, as if happiness might slip through his fingers again, just like Clara did, though he still remembered the early mornings when she would sneak up behind him and hug him from behind while he made coffee, laughing softly as she stole a sip from his mug. And suddenly, the bell above the café door chimed gently, that delicate sound that always announced a new arrival but never changed the rhythm of the world. Except today, when it would, because as he turned his head almost lazily to see who had entered, Lucas's voice shot through the air like a bolt of lightning. "Daddy, is that Mommy?" And for a second Samuel felt the world crack, not loudly, but like ice beneath the surface of a frozen lake, soft but devastating, and he turned in slow motion, gripping the edge of the table without realizing it, his breath lodging in his throat as he saw Clara, standing just beyond their table with her auburn hair cascading down her shoulders like it always did on the days she was happiest. Her face bathed in sunlight that made her look both real and unreal, as if she were stepping out of a dream he had forced himself to stop having because it hurt too much, and he whispered Clara, his voice barely audible, carrying disbelief and longing and fear, and she turned at the sound of her name, her eyes widening with a recognition that made something inside him collapse, and she said Samuel with a voice soft and trembling and heartbreakingly familiar. And suddenly, he was on his feet without remembering standing, his coffee cup clattering against the table as Lucas sat there wide-eyed, not understanding the storm that had erupted around him, because to Lucas she was just a picture in a drawer, a memory told through bedtime stories, a shadow he never truly knew. And as Samuel stood there, staring at her, all the years of grief and unanswered questions slammed into him like a tidal wave. Because why had she disappeared? Why had she left him drowning in responsibilities and heartbreak? Why had she left Lucas without a mother? And Clara stepped forward, tears forming in her eyes as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Samuel. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to leave you. I never wanted to leave him." And the apology sliced through him because it wasn't enough. Not after 5 years of imagining her dead, imagining her suffering, imagining her abandoning him willingly. And he felt the anger mixing with the shock as he asked, "Do you have any idea what you did to us, Clara?" His voice shaking with the weight of everything he had carried alone, and she nodded, tears streaming now, saying, "I thought it was for the best. I thought disappearing was the only way to spare you both from what I was going through. I was sick, Samuel, really sick, and I didn't want you to see me dying. I didn't want Lucas growing up with a memory of me fading away in front of him." And Samuel staggered back slightly because he didn't know this, he didn't know anything, because she had kept the truth locked away in silence, leaving him with nothing but the illusion that she chose to leave, that she didn't love them enough to stay. And Lucas looked between them innocently, sensing the tension and whispering, "Are you my mommy?" And Clara knelt down, her voice trembling but steady enough to say, "Yes, sweetheart, I'm your mommy, and I love you more than anything in this world." And Lucas studied her face with childlike curiosity, trying to reconcile the stories Samuel had told him with a real woman kneeling in front of him. And Samuel felt his heart twisting painfully because seeing her interact with Lucas like this, something he had imagined 1,000 times, made the anger blur with longing and confusion. And the days that followed were nothing short of chaotic, emotionally exhausting, because Samuel didn't trust her entirely but couldn't push her away either, not when Lucas looked at her with fascination, not when his own heart betrayed him every time she smiled in that gentle way she always did. And they began meeting every evening at the café, recreating the ritual that once defined the early days of their love, when they would sit together for hours talking about dreams and plans and the future they wanted to build. And now those moments were stitched with tension, hesitation, and fear of reopening wounds too deep to fully heal. And Clara explained slowly, over many meetings, how her illness had been severe, how doctors had given her little hope, how she had made the terrible choice to disappear because she believed sparing them the suffering was an act of love, though she now knew it had been an act of fear. And Samuel listened in silence, wrestling with every emotion imaginable, remembering the nights he stayed awake crying quietly so Lucas wouldn't hear, remembering how he tried to fill both parental roles, how he fought to keep their lives steady while his own heart was shattered, and yet underneath the hurt, the love he once felt for her stirred again, faint at first but undeniable, because he had never truly stopped loving her. He had just buried it under layers of survival, and as months passed, the three of them slowly created a rhythm, a new bond forged from broken pieces cautiously put back together. Lucas growing more attached to Clara as she learned how to be a mother again, and Samuel watching both with a mixture of tenderness and fear, because opening his heart again meant risking another loss, another abandonment, another collapse he wasn't sure he could survive. And one winter evening, after Lucas had fallen asleep curled up beneath a blanket on the couch, Clara and Samuel sat across from each other. In the quiet living room lit only by the fireplace, the crackling flames painting soft glows on the walls, and Clara spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper as she said, "I can't change the past, Samuel. I can't undo what I did, and I'll regret it until my last breath. But I want a future, I want to make this right. I want to be with you, with Lucas, if you can find a way to forgive me." And Samuel looked at her for a long moment, remembering the woman he fell in love with, the woman who danced barefoot in their kitchen, who dreamed with him, who held him like he was the only thing that mattered. And he realized that despite everything, despite the pain, he still saw her, still loved her, still wanted her, and he reached out, taking her hand gently, saying, "I don't want to live in the shadows anymore. I want to step into the light again, with you, if you're really here to stay." And Clara squeezed his hand as tears slipped down her face, whispering, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere again." And when they leaned into each other, holding tightly, it felt like the universe exhaled with them, releasing the years of tension that had weighed on their hearts. And as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, their lives intertwined again in slow, careful steps, rebuilding trust with late-night conversations, rebuilding love with soft kisses in the kitchen, rebuilding family with morning laughter from Lucas running into their bedroom. And Samuel realized that second, chances weren't given, they were built, and theirs was growing stronger every day, fueled by forgiveness, anchored by love, and healed by hope. And by the time spring arrived, melting the last remnants of winter, their home was no longer haunted by absence but filled with warmth, with laughter, with the soft reminders that love can return even after disappearing for years. And maybe that was the miracle they had been waiting for, the proof that broken things can be mended, that families can be rebuilt, that love lost can be love found, reborn brighter than before. And as Samuel watched Clara and Lucas playing in the backyard one sunny afternoon, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace, real peace. And he knew then that this second chance, this impossible reunion that began in a small cafe on a winter morning, wasn't just fate or coincidence, but the beginning of a new life for all three of them. A life built from pain, healed by time, strengthened by love, and destined to last. Because some stories don't end when everything falls apart. Some stories begin again exactly where they were broken.